Thought I'd go a little bit on a lighter note today. I'm doing some heavy, deep videos recently. Usually when I go on a lighter note, it's either, comedy or TV or sports. So this one's going to be sports. And I've talked about this in some other videos before about how kind of my relationship with sports has changed as I've evolved and my thinking has evolved. And it's always funny to think about this framework, this idea of trying to think better, be more logical, question more, how that plays out when you're looking at, a more trivial topic. When you're talking about something serious and complex and important, again, it's very heavy, it's very dense, there's a lot to it, it's very important, you need to be very deliberate and thoughtful. When you apply it to something like sports that's not that important, it's always funny to see the unintended kind of consequences or the unpredictability of how it plays out. So one example of that is kind of how sports, being a fan in sports, connects with being logical, if there's any real connection there at all. And the example I think about is, so I've been a huge New York Yankees fan. That's my baseball team. I've always loved them. I was in junior high when the most recent team kind of started their dynasty, right? 96 was their first World Series, and that was Derek Jeter, Mariano Rivera, Andy Pettitte, those guys. And there was this core four, which included Jorge Posada as well, that kind of won through the late 90s and early 2000s, and then again in 2009. So for that period, it was kind of the peak of my fanhood of the Yankees. And I was just super emotionally attached and invested in that team. I loved that team. I still love Derek Jeter to this day. And I knew all the players. I knew all the stats. I watched all the games, and it was a part of me. It was a part of my identity, who I was. What's funny about it is in 2000, I'm not going to remember the exact date now, but sometime in like the 2010s, like after Derek Jeter retired, that team more or less was not the same team anymore, right? Once he left and the other players had already left, none of those core players, none of those players that were part of the team that went from 96 to, when he retired, I think it was 2013, were there. So in effect, it's a different team. Now there's obviously some players that he played with in the late, in the 2009, 2010, 2000, that period. So there's a bit of a transition there, but it was not the team that I was a fan of. It was not that same core team. And I was always a little bit conflicted about that because I guess the rational, logical part of me looked at it and said, like, hey, this isn't the same team anymore. Like, I don't love this new team as much as the team that I knew, that I was so emotionally invested in. These are different players. These are different people. Like, I get it. They're wearing the same jerseys and their team name is the same. And I know in theory I'm supposed to feel exactly the same because I love the Yankees and that's my team. But what I loved was those players. Like, that's where the passion was. That's where the emotion was tied to. And, I have friends that are Yankees fans and all that, and they would give me a little bit of a hard time. And sometimes I found myself faking it, where I tried to conjure up that same emotion. And, the newer team, has been pretty good of late. And you try and kind of bring back that feeling and be as excited, be that same fan you were. And it was just never genuine, right? It was too illogical. And especially as I start thinking like this now, it's hard to fool yourself. It's hard to fool your mind. For a while, I was able to do it and just frankly lie to myself and say like, yeah, no, I would tell my friends, like, I love the Yankees still. And I would talk to them about it. And when they were in the playoffs, I would act as engaged. But it was never real. And more recently, I think I was having a conversation with my brother and we were kind of talking about this topic. And I kind of just hit a point where I was like, well, I should just be honest with myself. Like, I don't feel the same about them anymore. It's just not the same team. And to think that you would feel that same emotional attachment about a totally different group of players just because you're supposed to just didn't make sense to me. And don't get me wrong, for some people, I'm sure it works and they do love the team and they've loved them through generations and it's just about the uniform and the logo and the team and the stadium or whatever it is. So I'm not saying everybody has to feel this way, but for me, it just is not. It just is not logical. It's just not there. And it's silly to think that, for a while the idea was, well, I'll just fake it. I'll just make pretend, because that's what being a good sports fan is. So again, it's another one of those examples where it kind of hurts certain things that are not meant to be rational, things that are meant to be just driven on emotion and feelings and your identity and whatever it is. When you start to become much more aware of that and observant and train yourself to not allow those things to dictate how you work and to be more honest with yourself, this is one of those unpredicted or unintended consequences that plays out. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm still a baseball fan, but I don't watch nearly as many games. I don't keep up with the stats. I don't know the players as well anymore. It's just different. It's just different because it's a different team, and I'm a different person, and there's a different emotional attachment, if any, to them. The good thing is, I guess, part of evolving and maturing in this way, in terms of your thinking, is at least you can be honest about it, right? At least now I feel somewhat liberated to say, like, hey, I still like the Yankees. That's still my team. I'll root for them if they're doing well, but I'm not going to make pretend I live and die on their success, like I at one point actually did. It meant everything to me that they won and that they did well. I don't have to make pretend that anymore. So there's a bit of freedom in that, I think, and I think the being honest, having the ability to be genuine in that, just feels better. And not being ashamed, I guess, right? Because for a while it was I have to make pretend. I need to keep up appearances with friends or whoever it is. Feeling liberated from that to just be like, hey, that's I'm just a casual fan now. Which at a point in time to even say that would have been like, I can't tell people that. But now you can, because it's just the truth and it's logical, and it's kind of the way things go. And I've had some conversations with folks about this, like this whole idea of, but why would I feel the same way? Because it's a different team, though, right? It's different players. It would almost seem crazy for me to just blindly be like, I love these guys just the same. This new guy that I haven't really seen that much of course I love him because he's on my team. It just doesn't make sense. And it's funny because the response from most people who are still, which is fine, diehard fans, and it's foreign language to them. They can't grasp the way that I'm thinking about it. And they might be right. I'm probably overthinking it or overcomplicating it, because you should just have fun with sports. But again, one of those unintended consequences of trying to think better.